It was a mild mid-July morning in Hood River, Oregon. Thomas Morgan sat at the cluttered dining table on the balcony of the opulent Neuschloss Linderhof bed and breakfast inn. He wore a Gucci crest print Cuban collar silk shirt. A wrinkled linen napkin was still tucked into the waistband of his Valentino piped cotton pants. Otto Baumgartner, owner of the bed and breakfast, sat beside Tom. Amelie, Otto's wife, could be heard coming up the stairs. They don't get it, my friend, Tom said, shaking his head sadly. I don't know what more I can do to explain the situation. The real estate guys were supposed to qualify the prospects. My job was going to be simple. All I had to do was organize the exodus, schedule families who'd already agreed to participate. But all I'm seeing are pampered rich people who haven't a clue about the real world. Honestly, what's a guy going to do? Come on, Tom, said Otto, consoling his elegantly clad lodger. If it was easy, anybody could have done it. They chose you because you have people skills. You have passion. You really care about these creeps. Just because somebody's rich doesn't mean they have a lick of sense. What happened this morning to cause your most recent crisis of faith? Oh, I guess I'm just frustrated, sighed Tom. Not a problem. I'll get over it. It's just the handwriting on the wall couldn't be clearer. Time is running out. Now I'm having trouble getting these people on board. January won't work for me because the kids want to go skiing in Aspen one last time. Why can't I take all three pit bulls? They're family. I love my Mercedes convertible. Can't we talk about this tomorrow? I've got bridge this afternoon. Jesus, it's like herding cats. More port, Tom asked Amelie, coming out onto the balcony. At least Otto and I are on your side. We're going come hell or high water. High water is the definitive phrase, said Tom, graciously accepting another glass of the good port. If all the glaciers in the world melt, the sea level will rise 230 feet. Hood River is 160 feet above sea level, and we're 100 miles inland. What is it about climate change these people don't understand? More to the point, today's the 40th anniversary of the discovery of the anomaly. What anomaly would that be, Tom? Asked Amelie. The anomaly that led us to the location of sanctuary, replied Tom. I think that's what started it all. Tell us again about this sanctuary, said Otto. All I'm sure of is it's a big hole in the ground located in a protected wilderness area somewhere in the state of Montana. Big hole is right, replied Tom. Underground cave is more like it. In order to explain how big the hole is, I have to put it in our measurement units. You know, the United States never quite made it to the metric system, unlike the rest of the civilized world. A plot of land a mile on each side is called a section. There are 640 acres in a section. Imagine that you built 200 apartment buildings around the edge of that plot of land. Let's say each apartment building is 30 stories tall. You could comfortably move 500,000 people into those apartment buildings and still have room left over inside the section for commercial shops and entertainment facilities. Back up a second, Tom, said Otto. Now I'm confused. The real estate guy in North Carolina, Bob Marshall, told me the area was 640,000 acres. Noah said the area was 64,000 acres. Now you say sanctuary's actual size is 640 acres. Big difference. How large is sanctuary really? The entire Bob Marshall complex is 1.5 million acres, said Bob with a chuckle. The real estate guy was clearly exaggerating. His acreage estimate would involve nearly half of the wilderness complex. The whole state of Rhode Island is only 500,000 acres. Noah's estimate was a wild guess. My estimate is based on how much space we need to make sanctuary work. The truth is, nobody knows exactly how big the underground cave is. So what's this anomaly, asked Amelie again, and what does it have to do with sanctuary? 40 years ago, one of our members devised a technique for mapping soil characteristics far beneath the Earth's crust, said Tom. He called the process subterranean topographical cartography, or STC. He invented a device that shot puffs of sound at varying frequencies deep into the ground. The patterns the individual sound frequencies made when they emerged could be used to map the underground terrain. They tested the technique in the Bob. The device was strapped to the underside of a helicopter. Things were going quite well when the helicopter flew over an area where the sound puffs were inexplicably absorbed rather than reflected. Later, they realized the anomaly was due to the presence of a huge underground cave about 1,000 feet beneath the Earth's surface. You say later, said Otto. Why didn't they investigate the anomaly when it first came up? The STC technique had an adverse side effect, said Tom. The puffs of sound killed warm-blooded animals, like people. A Boy Scout troop had gone hiking in the Bob. When the helicopter flew overhead, they were all killed instantly. The testers picked the Bob because it wasn't populated. Nobody knew the scout troop would be there. Needless to say, our member abandoned work on the STC project immediately. Incidentally, when the dead scout troop was discovered, it was presumed they'd been mauled by bears. There's lots of bears in the Bob. So they decided to build sanctuary in the underground cave, asked Amelie. Get to the point, Tom. Not right away, said Tom. The underground cave was in the middle of the wilderness area. You can't build roads or drive trucks in a wilderness area. They did the next best thing. Another one of our members invented an enormous boring machine. He called the machine Fat Albert. The machine had these huge blades up front that dug into the earth. Fat Albert crushed the removed material into an amalgam of pebbles and clay. Half the excavated material was deposited behind Fat Albert as a roadbed. The other half was ferried back to Whitefish on electric carts. Railroad ties and tracks were laid on the roadbed. The guy who invented the puffs of sound device got together with the guy who invented Fat Albert, and they came up with a remote-controlled boring machine that used sound puffs in addition to blades to tunnel into the earth. And since it didn't require humans on board to run it, it was perfectly safe. Killed a lot of gophers, though. Focus, Tom, said Amelie. What about sanctuary? They built the Fat Albert sound puffs prototype in Michigan. When they were satisfied that it worked, they broke it down and put the parts on a freight train to Whitefish, Montana. They rebuilt Fat Albert in Whitefish and mapped out a path to the approximate location of the anomaly in the Bob. The effort took 15 highly skilled engineers 11 months to complete. It's hard to keep something that size a secret for 11 months, but they managed. Once Fat Albert was operational, they cranked him up, angled him down, and let him go. They had a pretty good idea of where the underground cave was. They knew roughly how deep it was beneath the surface, and they were able to make course corrections on the fly. How many miles from Whitefish to Sanctuary? Asked Otto. 30 miles due east, said Tom. And 1,000 feet down, the angle of descent was less than 1 degree. The tunnel took 7 years to dig. When Fat Albert got to the cave, he was 70 feet above the surface. They had to back him up a mile, manually tear up the track, and recalculate the angle of descent. But they figured there'd be enough space in 640 acres to house 500,000 people, asked Otto. I did the math in my head, and I say you're wrong. My brain is starting to hurt, said Amelie. Can we talk about something besides numbers for a change? What's the weather like in Montana in the spring? Cold, just like in the winter and the fall, said Tom. But to answer Otto's question, you're forgetting most of the people in Sanctuary aren't rich guys. 80% of them are support staff like you and Amelie. They only need a quarter as much space, say 3,500 square feet. That's still more living area than they're used to. Now you can house your 500,000 residents in 200 buildings. I forgot about support people, said Otto thoughtfully. I guess us support folks need a place to live too. That's 400,000 of your 500,000 residents. No way we could all live in Whitefish and commute back and forth every day. What's the population of Whitefish? 7,600, said Tom. There's only 1 million people in the whole state of Montana. I'm going to bed, said Amelie, getting up and brushing off her skirt. If you boys need anything else, help yourselves. Sorry for the lecture on logistics, Amelie, said Tom, getting up and collecting the port glasses. I do feel better now that we've talked it all out. The biggest part of the project was laying down a firm foundation in the cave and putting up the buildings. If the engineers and architects can make an underground cave livable, I guess my team and I can do our small part to make Sanctuary a reality. Not wishing to further upset my spouse, said Otto, but I have one more question and it has nothing to do with logistics. Shoot, said Tom. I know how you're hoping to attract the rich folks, continued Otto, but how are you planning to recruit support people? Amelie and I certainly didn't have much of a job interview. I wonder the same thing, said Amelie, sitting back down. Just no numbers, please. You raise a good question, said Tom. Let me see if I can clarify things. We refer to rich people as elites. An elite family needs at least $20 million in net worth to qualify for residence in Sanctuary. Furthermore, they must be willing to donate that $20 million to reserve a residence in perpetuity inside Sanctuary. Sorry, I used some numbers. Not a problem, said Amelie. I understand money. What about us support people? A support has to qualify individually, said Tom. We prefer husband and wife support teams to singles. It simplifies living arrangements. But both members must qualify, not necessarily in the same line of work. If a support couple has one or two children under the age of 15, the children are grandfathered in. Having more than two children under the age of 15 automatically disqualifies a support. If a support is single, he or she must agree to share a residence with three other single supports of the same gender. That gets a little tricky. All supports take a skills assessment test to determine their competence level. Each skill classification has a quota. When the quota is filled, no more supports are recruited for that skill classification. And finally, all supports are expected to work at least 5 hours a day, 4 days a week at their assigned tasks. That's about it. How about us then, asked Otto. We didn't agree to anything. We didn't take any tests. Well, there's the exception, said Tom. If a governor invites you to participate in Sanctuary, you're automatically in. Then I guess Noah's a governor, said Otto. Noah's the boss dog governor, said Tom. He's also my dad. Not many people mess with Noah. Not many people mess with Amelie either, said Noah. Night, Tom. Sleep tight. Say hi to Dad for us.